Welcome back, guys, to our I think it will be the third lecture for the revision assessment, and now coming to the topics we are going to discuss in this particular lecture. We will be discussing what is the web services. All these things we have already covered in our class, so uh, I will just not dig deep in the topics, and we will be just going through the overview. But if you are having any trouble, then definitely you can contact me. This lecture series is basically for you to just understand that what the important topics we have to go, we have to dig deep and for the better understanding of the subject. But if you are having any problem, then definitely you can contact me. So we will talk about the web service, we will talk about the practical uses of the web services, then we will talk about the types of web services, then we will talk about the two basically these two different paradigms of web services. One is the SOAP service and second one is the REST. Then we will compare how SOAP and REST differs from each other. Okay. Now we will talk about what is the web service. So what is a web service? Web service is the piece of software that makes itself available over the internet. So basically it's like a software, but somehow it acts like an agent, and what the web user do simply makes a request, and it will just uh, take the request from the user and uh, do the mining of the data or the requirements what the web user wants, and just available or make available this information or the process data to the user. So again, the next point we talk about the collection of the protocols and standards used for exchanging data between applications or systems. So actually, when we talk about the systems, then definitely sometimes systems are of the homogeneous of nature, and sometimes they are heterogeneous of the nature. Then sometimes it is difficult to exchange the data to the heterogeneous platforms. So we have to build a set of protocols and standards so that the transfer or the exchange of the data between these types of systems be compatible and safe, so that the whole system will work as an integrated unit. So definitely, if we want the web services to compete with the development, then we have to build a set of protocols and standards uh, for the development of the web services. So exchange of the data is preferably in the standard format like JSON and XML. We have already discussed these things in our class, that JSON and XML are two different basically standards that used to format the data that is to be exchanged between the parties. So now we coming to the next point. The important aspects of the web service is to provide a service, not necessarily an UI for humans. This is one of the more important aspects, that because most of the time we deals with the user interfaces, but uh, uh, it's not necessary that the services are provided to humans only. Sometimes we require data for the softwares or for the applications. Suppose we want location data from the Google. So, and we want that this data is not to be seen by the humans, or only to be processed by any software which is targeting the different customers of a company across the world. So sometimes the data requirements are not only for the humans. If the data requirements are only for the humans, we most of the time deals with the user interfaces. But The web services are not like that. Mm, The, the things or the data sometimes need to be processed by the application softwares, not in the form of the user interfaces. They are working behind the scenes. So it was an important aspect of the web service, and the service is not necessarily for UIs in the form of the UIs for the humans. The web services are meant mostly for the other applications or systems. This is also saying the same meaning we have discussed in the previous point, that applications and systems sometimes want some specific services from any other system or the application, such as in our case sometimes we need data to be processed from the Twitter account, or we can say that if we want to just do sentimental analysis, then somehow the application we develop need the data from the Twitter, and somehow the data from the Twitter to be uh, exchanged among the application we have developed. So this is basically done in the form of the application programming, with the use of the application programming interface. And most of the time uh, we need dedicated web services to do this job. Now we can see in this diagram the things are particularly in this diagram the things are the actually I just trying to clarify the things that websites allow humans to communicate and collaborate. The same thing we have discussed in our previous slide. User interface of the website is basically designed for the humans, but web services allow systems to communicate and collaborate. Basically, web services provides the mechanism by which the heterogeneous systems or the system applications just trying to communicate with each other. It's just like a uh, just like a machine communicating with the machines. Till now, we tried to communicate with the machines, and for that communication medium, we tried to build the graphical user interfaces. Now we talk about the type of web services. So some web services are SOAP based, and then here in this particular slide we will talk about what is SOAP. Basically, SOAP is the Simple Object Access Protocol. We have discussed it in class in all details, and basically it is a protocol. uh, it can work almost any internet protocol. All the existing protocols of the internet can be integrated with the SOAP. So this is basically um, this basically this protocol is basically made to work with the existing system. So any existing internet protocol can deal with the SOAP protocol, and it permits only XML. The data exchange between the two systems are done in the form of the XML. As we know that XML is a platform independent tool for transferring the data from one system to another. So again we can see that in the designing of this protocol we have support from SSL and AWS security, and whatever the transferred is transferred in the form of the envelope, and it requires more bandwidth because uh, we need we need to transfer many other things with the data, such as we can see in the SOAP envelope. We have to have header, we have body, we have web service definition language to just format the data that is to be that need to be transferred. So somehow it requires more. Now we can see that basically the request and response using SOAP in the form of the XML. We can see the the service consumer, the consumer, or we can see the user which wants service basically make a SOAP request in the form of XML, and the service provider make a response in the form of XML. So basically the communication using SOAP is done using the XML language. Now we will talk about the REST protocol. Actually, REST is not a protocol. It's a representation registered transfer. It's basically a architecture. It's an architecture. It's not a protocol. SOAP was a protocol, and it works mostly HTTP. It works with the hypertext transfer protocol, which is the existing protocol for the internet, and REST uses HTTP's all CRUD operations. CRUD operations means C for create, R for read, U for update, D for delete. So for creating we use post method. For read we use the get method. For update we use put method. For delete we use delete method of the HTTP protocol. So the transmission is done in the form of postcard, and it requires less bandwidth. So we have seen in SOAP that it requires more bandwidth because the transmission is done with some other information which is relevant for the protocol. So somehow we need to transfer some extra information in form of envelope. So SOAP requires more bandwidth. REST permits not only XML and files type like JSON can be used. So this is backward compatible with the existing style such as SOAP. So if we were using SOAP for the communication for the web service, then definitely the REST can also be used, because it is also used with the XML. And basically the new websites or the new web services are being made to use JSON, because JSON is somehow um, evolving to be a better medium of the transmission among the machines. So but somehow the REST architecture is compatible with the XML also, so REST can use XML as well as JSON. Now we can see how the REST works. Basically in the similar fashion, uh, there was in SOAP, there was a request in the form of XML, and there was a response in the form of XML. But here we can see that the request can be made using the URL, that is the HTTP method. So uh, it's somehow more suitable for the consumer, because the things are in the form of the URL, and we are easily we can easily process the URI information. So uh, it is more compatible for the humans, and the things or the objects which are to be accessed are given the URI. So we just give the URI in our client, and just press the enter button. Then that request in the form of the URI is transferred to the server, and the server process the request, and the response is generated, and it is postcarded to the service page. So this was the REST um, architecture for the web service. Now we can see that if we go for the comparison of SOAP versus REST, then we can see that both are language independent. SOAP and REST both are language independent, means they are not dependent on the platform. And we can see that what about HTTP status codes. So we can see that REST uses all the facilities provided by the HTTP. So we can see here that REST uses same status codes which HTTP used earlier, and we can see that here status code can be user defined. So user can define the status code, status code in the form of XML. Security. If we talk about security, very secure, used in banking as the whole envelope can be encrypted. So we can see that the transmission was in the form of the envelope, and the whole envelope can be encrypted. So here in the rest we can see that we can use the services of HTTPS also. So it is also secure, and because it is running in the current system, so definitely uh, the developers or the designers will be having more focus on the security. Overhead more, as the whole envelope need to send. We have already discussed this point with the SOAP, that we need high bandwidth, but in REST we need very less bandwidth. So this was the comparison between SOAP and REST. We have discussed about the web services, we have discussed about SOAP and REST. Thank you, class.